Welcome to On-Demand Instructions video on Literature Standard 3. We will discuss the development of complex characters. We will be covering the core standards in literature, analyze how complex characters develop over the course of a text, interact with other characters, and advance the plot or develop the theme. This session's goals are to analyze complex characters. Let's start with what you already might know about this subject by answering these questions. What is a complex character? How does it develop? How does it advance the plot or develop the theme? A character is a person depicted in a story. For example, Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk is a character in that story. The giant is also a character. There are many different types of characters. Jack is a major character, as he is the most important person in the story because the story is about him, whereas his cow that he trades for the magic beans is a minor character. The complex character is a character that has more than one aspect of their personality. This type of character is often portrayed as a conflicted and contradictory person. They are usually realistic and multifaceted. Different motivations come into play in different situations. They usually change or grow as a result of the story's actions. Sometimes they will learn something about themselves, other people, or the world as they struggle to resolve their conflicts. The changes that this type of character undergo contributes to the meaning of the story. Ebenezer Scrooge from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol is a complex character. He is mean and crusty in the beginning of the story, but by the end of the story he has changed considerably and became more understanding and compassionate. He also has many sides to him. In his schoolboy years, he was abandoned by his father at a boarding school, even during Christmas, planting the first seed of his hatred for the holiday. He was an eager go-getter when he worked for Mr. Fezziwig, who he eventually bought out of business. He became obsessed with work, which compels his fiancée Belle to leave him, further hardening his heart. He undergoes many changes throughout the course of the story. A character's motivation is that which propels them, their personality. It is why the character acts the way they do. It is an answer to the question, why? It is what keeps them going. For example, in the book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, Alice travels through Wonderland and meets the people she meets and has the adventure she has because she's looking for a garden. Why does she continue through Wonderland? Because she wants nothing more than to get to the garden that she saw through the little door after she fell down the rabbit hole. Finding the garden is her motivation. There are different types of motivation that a character can have. The character can have a goal. He could want glory, be greedy, looking for knowledge, redemption, vengeance, or just be a wanderer. He could be a psychopath trying to shrug responsibility, be a teacher, or a mentor, or a thrill seeker. A character can also have multiple motivations as well. Grendel from the epic Beowulf is motivated to kill for sport, survival, and revenge for being outcast. A character can also have conflicting motivations. The character could, for example, have to choose between stealing to feed his family and watching them starve. The development of a complex character can come from its motivations. Let's take as an example of the character that had to choose between stealing to feed his family and watching them starve. If, in the course of the story, he got caught by the police, he could develop into a hardened criminal in prison. After prison, he may become further involved in criminal activities. On the other hand, he may be so torn about having to steal, he may not go through with it. He may decide on another course of action that saves his family without him needing to become a criminal. These are examples of how a complex character could develop. Characters rarely exist on their own. Even a story with a premise of loneliness usually has some form of relationship, even if it's only animal companionship, such as a dog. One of the most interesting insights of the character relationships is how a character acts differently around other characters. For example, a character that is very confident and successful may turn into a blithering idiot around a member of the opposite sex. The supporting characters in a story usually have an effect on the main characters. They are the ones who can cause the conflict and cause change. In the example of the potential criminal, he could have interacted with his cellmate who convinced him to continue his life of crime, or he could have interacted with the policeman who convinced him otherwise. A plot is the main story idea. It is the pattern of events that makes up the story. The decisions the complex character makes will generally advance the plot. The conflict he faces makes new plot progress that will lead to a resolution. The theme is the moral of the story. It is what the story is trying to tell you, the point it is trying to make. A complex character also affects the theme with its conflicts and decisions. A poor decision, like one to steal or kill, will maybe make for a cautionary theme. A good choice, such as helping another or being honest, will generate a happier or more upbeat theme. Without complex characters would all be simple and bland and would not contribute anything to the plot or theme. Imagine how boring a story would be with no conflict. The 3 little pigs would have just lived in their houses happily forever, if not for the wolf. But they learned from the conflict and changed and created a house that kept the wolf out. Complex characters are used in almost all stories, from simple children's stories to War and Peace by Dostoevsky. Severus Snape from the Harry Potter series is a very complex character. We are not sure if he is good or bad, or which side he is on. At one time, it's pretty certain that he is on the side of evil, but in a surprise turn, he's really good. Over the series, he makes many twists and turns, and the reader is never really certain until the very end of the series. His conflict was, in part, with Voldemort killing the woman he loved, even though she was married to someone else. He was willing to put his life on the line and lose to avenge her as a resolution to the problem. Let's do an activity to further enhance your skills. Read the following stories. Pause the video if necessary. List the characters in each story, then answer these questions. Which characters are complex? What is their conflict? What is their motivation? Read the following story. Pause the video if necessary. List the characters. Then answer these questions. Which characters are complex? What is their conflict? What is their motivation? How could you recognize a complex character? A complex character has conflict and a multifaceted personality. They usually change or grow as a result of the story's actions. They may learn something about themselves, other people, or the world as they struggle to resolve their conflicts. What is a character's motivation? A character's motivation is why the character acts the way they do. It is an answer to the question why. It is what keeps them going. How does a complex character affect the plot? The complex character gives dimensions to the story. Their conflicts and decisions are what makes a story interesting. As a student, you're expected to know how a complex character can develop over a text. Recognize how a complex character interacts with other characters. See how a complex character can advance the plot or develop the theme. We've come to the end of our session. We have discussed complex characters, character motivation, development of the complex character, character interaction, the effects a complex character has on a plot or theme. To learn more, go to these websites for additional information. Return to www.ondemandinstruction.com for more instructional videos, podcasts, and materials. We update the site weekly.